Our last person to testify is Ellen Weaver, but she is one of the most important for sure.
I'm happy to announce I'm not running for governor, so we'll give you a little bit of non-candidate testimony here to close things out. No. Well, thank you so much again to this committee for allowing me to be here today. And this is an issue that is very near and dear to my heart personally, because I have been affected by term limits. I worked for a gentleman who y'all know as Senator Jim DeMint, who voluntarily term limited himself in both the House and the Senate. And so my personal job was on the line on the issue of term limits. And I have to say that I really respect Senator DeMint for taking that stand and for being willing to not just espouse a principle, but actually live it out in practice. And he sent his greetings today. He's very supportive of what you all are doing here and really commended this effort. You know, in terms of the effectiveness argument, people say, you know, you may not be effective if you voluntarily term limit yourself. I have to say that Senator DeMint is a great example to the contrary, and the reason that he is an example to the contrary is because people were behind him. They knew that he was a man of integrity and that when he said he was going to do something, he was going to do it. And because of that, he, with the help of Senator Coburn and a few others, eliminated the system of earmarks in Washington, D.C., which was a pervasive system of corruption that was basically used to log roll huge, massive omnibus spending bills through by promising members projects in their individual districts. And for years, the legislators had gamed the system and said, there's no way you're ever going to eliminate earmarks in Washington, D.C. Well, I stand here today, earmarks have been eliminated in Washington, D.C., and all while Senator DeMint was term limited, again, because of the power of the voice of the people behind him. I want to kind of take a little bit of a different look at term limits today, and it really comes down to the matter of incentives. It's all about human nature. When I'm trying to encourage my 6-year-old nephew to sit still in church on Sunday mornings, I have to ask you, do you think I'll have better luck if I promise to take him out for broccoli or ice cream after the service, right? So we respond to incentives, and I think a lot of time in the term limits debate, it's very popular to bash elected officials as corrupt and self-serving, and maybe some of them are. But having personally worked in a legislative office, I think the vast majority of lawmakers are simply responding to a system of very pervasive and perverse incentives. And this is how passionate, well-meaning people can get elected to office and spend 5 months of their year and countless hours in Columbia, often with very little solutions-based progress to show for it. The fact is, our current system of seniority rewards those who keep their head down and don't rock the boat long enough to ascend to a powerful committee chairmanship, which they can then hold indefinitely and use to dole out favors, rake in campaign cash, and in short, build up a personal fiefdom if they so choose. This is the system that has brought us stagnant K-12 education, a vastly underfunded public pension system, a $9 billion hole in the ground, a gas tax hike with no prioritized plan to spend it, and a tax system stuck in an infinite loop of special interest giveaways and higher rates on a shrinking tax base. In short, this system has brought us a government of the powerful, by the powerful, and for the powerful, and the little guy or gal just trying to make ends meet gets stuck footing all the bills. The consistent argument that I've heard against term limits is that they may give too much power to staff and lobbyists. And if you look at the 11 or so states that do have term limits, you may be able to find examples of this. But given the fact that here in South Carolina, an incredibly complex piece of legislation like the Baseload Review Act was passed through both houses of this General Assembly in a scant 7 legislative days, with, I'm guessing, very few members actually reading and understanding it, I think we'd be hard-pressed to argue that it would be possible to delegate more power to paid interest and unelected staff than our current system already does. Are term limits the silver bullet to correct all of South Carolina's structural imbalances of power? That's doubtful. There are still Senate rules that allow 1/46 of our state, or 2% of the population, to veto something that the other 45-46 might want. Our superintendent of education should be appointed instead of elected. Our executive branch should have more authority. And there are still far too many consequential decisions that are made by relatively unaccountable, politically appointed boards and commissions. But term limits would be a step towards realigning the incentives of office holding towards young energy and fresh ideas to move our state forward. We have so many incredible advantages in this state we call home, and it's a shame that far too often our outdated, moribund government system stifles the full promise of our birthright. Term limits, again, would be a hugely positive step forward towards breaking this stranglehold on opportunity in our state, and I just really commend this committee for the work they're doing, the discussion that they've started, and I hope that we are able to put this to the people in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Questions? Senator Rice.
Yeah, if you notice, I don't know if you looked at the chart here, but the NCSL, our bill's got 12-year term limits, House and Senate. Many of these are 8-year term limits. Having served in the House, I feel like 12 years is probably a better solution, just for the reason that, and we talked about orientation earlier. It takes a little while to find the bathrooms down here, and, you know, that's at least 2 years, and then after that, you start hunting. And we do have the issue of either staff running the place or lobbyists running the place. Do you feel like an 8-year versus a 12-year? Have you got an opinion on that?
I don't have an opinion on time, but I will say that I think there's a variance between what would work in different states. If I'm not mistaken, and you can fact check me on this one, I believe that the Florida legislature has 6-year term limits. Is that correct? I don't have that chart.
It says 8.
They have 8-year term limits, and so I would say, you know, when you look at what happened in Florida, and you can agree or disagree with his politics, but I think all of us would agree that Senator Marco Rubio is an exceptionally bright and articulate person, the kind of energetic, idea-based person that we would want serving. You know, the people of really any state. And he rose to be Speaker of the House in those 8 years. He did a tour of the state of Florida where he gathered, I think he called it 100 innovative ideas for Florida's future, and was able to successfully move a lot of those ideas forward during his 8 years. And so I tend to look at a shorter time limit as just added incentive and added sense of urgency to truly make this about an ideas-based agenda, as opposed to just kind of running out the clock and seeing how far you can advance within the system.
Okay, I do believe, and I'm probably not correct on this, but I do know that I think it was Idaho, is that right, that repealed, I believe it was. But anyway, I was thinking that they repealed it because they had 6-year term limits, and I thought that, this is going back, and I'm 61 years old, and, you know, I'm starting to lose my mind. So, but, you know, I'm thinking that the shorter term limits sometimes created problems, and that may have been the situation.
That makes sense, and I think there's definitely an important balance to be struck there.